So the PLSQL programming language is used to combine multiple SQL statements with the procedural constructs. I can put multiple SQL statements in a PLSQL block, and I can execute that as a program. So since I cannot achieve the programming using a SQL statements, I need to have a PLSQL block. So PLSQL is nothing but procedural language extension to a structured query language. It will give us a programming. Um, it will give us a programming constructs. So I can use I can I can use multiple SQL statements inside PLSQL block. I can also use if else conditions, loops, and various programming features in PLSQL. Basically, PLSQL is a programming language at database side. So we know that Java is a programming language for developing applications at middleware. And if you take HTML, HTML is a front-end programming language. In same way, PLSQL is a programming language database side. I want to manipulate different SQL statements using if-else conditions. So that's how we use the PLSQL um, programming language. So let us take a simple examples. I will explain how we can use the PLSQL in real time in IT industry. If we want to develop an application using PLSQL language, how developers are going to use this PLSQL language, I'm going to explain that to you today. Okay, and you most of the people they're aware of the SQL only to the level of SQL statements like DDL statements, DML statements, you know, inserting data, executing data, retrieving data, and updating some tables, dropping tables. So this is uh, in real time. So this is not the case where we use the SQL programming. Rather, we use the PLSQL programming for application development. I will explain how we can use this PLSQL because we need to use multiple SQL statements inside a PLSQL block to achieve our project requirement. So um, I'm taking a simple anonymous PLSQL block. So here you can see we are just declaring a variable. Okay, now how we are assigning that variable with the hello world word, and then we are printing that message. Right, it's a simple PLSQL block with no name. There is no name for this PLSQL. These kind of PLSQL blocks we call them as anonymous blocks. So I'm running this. I'm just printing a simple hello world right here. So I can also declare many variables if I want to. Um, you see, I want to declare other variable message sub. Okay, and I want to assign uh, 200. The sizes I have given a 200, and this is other message, and I want to print it. Semicolon. We missed the semicolon here. You see. Uh, okay. See. So I have assigned another variable with another message, and I just printed it. Okay. So I can use a multiple statements. So you can see begin and end. So I'm just between these two keywords, I can include as many number of SQL statements as I can do because this is a programming language now. So I can utilize multiple SQL statements here. I can run multiple SQL statements. Okay. Um, for example, select uh, test from dual table. Okay, I want to assign it into this another variable. Okay, and now I want to print it after this statement. You see, I have used one SQL statement, two print statements, right, inside it, inside this PLSQL block. So it is like a programming language. You can do uh, whatever you want um, using SQL statements. So you can use multiple SQLs, you can use print statements, you can use if else statements, you can also use loops. So I will explain all those scenarios going forward, how you can use using a SQL back. But the problem here is this SQL program, this PLSQL program is not having any name. Okay, it is not having any name. So if I don't have a name, how can I use this one as a program? So generally when we write a programs, we will save those programs with a name. You take a Java. So if you take a Java, we will store that Java file using .java. Okay, and if you take HTML, we will store that files using a .html, and I can use that um, programs by executing particular program name with the corresponding extension. So I can't do that here because it is not having any name, which is why we call these kind of PL SQL procedures as a anonymous PL anonymous blocks. Okay, so in real time we will not use the procedures like this in application development. We will never use the PLSQL development like this. Rather, we will write the procedures using a name. So I'm going to take a simple example, the named procedure. I'm going to explain you the named procedure. You take here. So we have given a get employee details name to this particular PLSQL program. Okay, PLSQL procedure, and this is how in real time it works. See, we will send some input variable. Based on that input, the program should get some output, right? So this is how any program we will design. So you take a Java or front end, anything, when we will give some request, some input, and that will process the data and that will get the data. So in the same way here, this named procedure, this procedure is taking a employee ID is input, and it is fetching employee name and employee salary details based on that input. So that is why we have given in parameter for employee ID and out parameters for the respective columns which we want to retrieve. So whenever you see in parameter, it is indicating that this procedure will receive some input variable from the client. Okay, and wherever you see out means, so this will return the response from the procedure. Okay, in parameter means it will take the input from the client. Out parameters are the procedure will return the data to the client. Okay, that's how we create these procedures, PLSQL statements. So here in real time, generally, uh, I want to get a employee details based on some employee ID. So now here what we are doing, it is taking employee ID and then it is processing, it is fetching first name and salary details. Okay, it is and assigning those details into these out variables and returning the data. This is how it has to do that. So let's call this program, and we will see PLSQL code, and we will see how it will execute. So I'm using this anonymous PLSQL code for executing it. In general, in real IT, the procedure will be called from the application layer, either from Java layer or Python or whatever the language you use. They will call this name of the stored procedure, get employee details, and they will pass this employee ID. They will get the output returned by this procedure. That's how they will do this. But here in our example, I am just for invoking the store procedure, I am using a simple anonymous block. This is, we are doing it just for our understanding, but in real time application will call this store procedure by using its name. Its name is a reference, right? So the procedure will get stored with this name. So whenever I want to uh, call this procedure, I want to invoke this procedure, I will just use the name as a reference, and I can get the data. So this procedure is taking employee ID, and here you can see I'm passing employee ID as 100, and out parameters I just mentioned as it is, because I these values will be returned from the SP, will be returned, and the output data will be binded to these variables. Okay, so the output data will be binded to the out variables, because we specified these parameters as out parameters. So wherever we specify in parameter, we have to, the client has to pass the data. Wherever we specify out parameters, the output data will be binded from the stored procedure as a returned result set. Okay, so now I'm executing this. See, I have passed employee id, I have passed employee id 100, and then it returns for employee name as Bob and salary is 23,432. Okay, this is how we use this named store procedures. So named store procedures are useful in application development at backend side. If we want to write a program using multiple SQL statements and programming constructs features. See, I have used exception handling also inside this begin and end block. Right, whenever some exception happen, it will go here. It will return error. Right, whenever there is no data, it will return not no data found. So I can utilize multiple SQL statements also. I'll explain that going forward in other examples. So this is one of the examples. So here you can see in IT, in general, the developer will write the stored procedure in this manner. So they will provide all the input variables, whatever the inputs the particular program is expecting with the in parameter, and they will mark the output variable with out parameter wherever they want to get a result to particular um, variables. But the thing here is, see, I have a two output parameters, right? You can say I'm getting that. So let's go with the another example. So the thing is, uh, here I'm getting a data with the two output parameters. So imagine there is my project requirement. I want to get multiple output parameters, multiple output variables as a data. Then what happens? So I have to increase this. I have to mention these output variables like this. So it will increase the programming length. So this is not a standard scenario for writing the stored procedure. If the requirement is like the PLSQL procedure should have multiple output parameter variables, it may lead to the infinite number of output parameter variables. So in such scenarios, what should we have to do? So we have to handle this in different way. So you got it right. The requirement is there is only one input parameter, but the output can be multiple output variables, unlimited number of, or thousand output variables we have to specify. Then writing the PLSQL program like this is not a standard approach. We have a reference cursor. Reference cursor is generally used in such scenarios to avoid that problem. So I'm going to take this reference cursor example here. So you see reference cursor. We have only one output parameter, that is the reference cursor. Okay, assigned with the reference cursor type. Reference cursor types are generally used for implementing stored procedures in real time scenarios. So as I told you, right, if the output returned by the stored procedure uh, is simply two or three parameters, we can go ahead with the first approach. But if we need to return multiple output parameters, multiple columns of data from a table, okay, then uh, we should use the reference cursor approach. Okay, you should use the reference cursor approach. So here I'm using a dual table, because this is for just for example, I'm just taking a dual. Okay, right. So you see here, mm, so the thing is, um, we are getting data from employee table Steve. uh, okay, and we are not assigning the data into any variable. Rather, we are opening a cursor and simply we are providing a select statement. Okay, and then so here we can see we are executing. We are passing the employee ID as input parameter, and output parameter is a out cursor, simply single variable. This single cursor will be mapped to all columns, all output variables. Okay, that's how it will return the data. See, we are getting an example here, error here, because there is no employee table. I am just taking some dummy table. Okay, we don't need this one also. Now I am returning a two columns, column 1 and column 2. Okay, I am running it. See, I got a first name as a Steve and salary is the second column, but I declared only one out parameter here. You have seen that in previous example we have declared two out parameters here. So for first name I have declared one column, for salary also I have declared another column. But in this example, you can see we have declared only one out, output parameter, that is a cursor, reference cursor. So this is the main example in application development at backend side. In general, in every IT industry, the developer used to write the store procedure using this approach only. So this will support the real-time scenarios as per the project requirement. So because uh, in every project the procedure has to return multiple columns of data, right? It has to return multiple columns of data. In that scenario we cannot simply specify for each response, we cannot specify the separate column as the output parameter. We will simply specify this cursor, system reference cursor, and whatever the column we are returning, it will map that column to there. See, I am adding another third column here. Okay, So I can also add a third column. But the problem is, see, the return types of the result set variables do not variables or query do not match, because I have specified three columns here. In the same way, in the calling block also, I need to see, I'm fetching this cursor into two variables, right? I'm fetching this cursor into two variables. I have to assign another name again for this in a calling block. So I have given a name one, okay, and I can update this here, okay, and so this one I can change like this by placing it. This one other name. Some mistake was happened here. Wait, I have declared first name one, fetch cursor into first name. Wait, expecting one of the symbol here, okay, maybe uh, okay, I need to have another so another colon here. So now you see it is returning a third table. So I can retrieve um, as many number of columns as we want. So we can assign all those columns to a single cursor, single output variable. Right? This is how we use the system reference cursor. This is the type of the cursor name. It is a predefined data type. Predefined data type for output variables. So we will open the cursor and we will apply a select statement. The select statements can have multiple number of columns. It can have 1,000 columns. It can have 10,000 columns. We can specify all those columns and assign all those columns data to simple cursor. Okay, at the client side, we have to iterate that cursor. We will assign all those values into different variables, right? Here we are using anonymous block, but in general at application side, they will iterate this cursor. They will assign all those values into different variables. So that's how they will develop the application. At backend side, they will use the reference cursor to for retrieving multiple columns as a data, output data, and at client side they will use this cursor and they will iterate this cursor reference variable, and they will fetch the required details, whatever the details they wanted. So this is how in real time they will develop the PLSQL programming stored procedures at backend side. So let's take another example. uh, okay, now we have seen what is procedure and all. What about function? So I'll explain what is the function and what is the procedure, what is the main difference in real time, um, how they use this function and how they use this procedure. I'll explain that in application development at backend side, how a developer use this function concept and procedure concept. So I'm not telling in academic point of view, because the academic point of view we will just discuss in the low level details, just declaration and keywords. But I'm not going to uh, I don't want to discuss in the academic point of view. I want to explain in real time IT perspective. how developers and IT people use this PLSQL programming for developing application. In application development, how they contribute the uh, code using this PLSQL programming. So there I'm going to stressing, so you can understand this. So now, in general, if we ask anybody what is the difference between function and procedure, everybody will tell function will return a value, where procedure does not return a value. So they'll tell this, uh, tell like this. So that is correct. So I'm going to take a function. Okay, I'm going to take a function. I'm going to create a function. See, function in PLSQL programming, it will return a value. So I'm taking some simple function. Return means when I call this, it will return me some value. Okay, it will give me some value. So it is like that. For example, I'm passing monthly salary of an employee, and I want to expect what is the annual salary of that particular employee. So we have written a some calculate annual salary function, and we are passing monthly salary as a input variable in parameter. And this function, what it is doing, it is multiplying that monthly salary using a number 12. So for because I'm expecting annual salary for each annum, there will be 12 months. So I'm multiplying monthly salary using a 12. So then it will give us the annual salary. So multiplying the monthly salary by 12 will give us the annual salary, because every each year will have 12 months. So okay, so that's how we are uh, designed this function. So the function will return a value, right? So we specified the return output as a number, right? Because it is returning the integer value, not the character value. It is returning number value, numeric, which is why we specified return number. So this is the difference between function and procedure, because function will return a value, where procedure will not return anything. And now I want to use this function inside my procedure. Okay, because function is just a function. I have created a function, and I want to use that function inside any programming, right? Generally, you take any programming language, you take Java or Python, we will have multiple functions. We will utilize those keywords inside programming language. In the same way, when we create a function using a function keyword, it will become like a function, and we can reuse that function name anywhere in the programming language, anywhere in the PLSQL programming. Okay, we can also call that function inside any other function or any other procedure as well. So I have created another procedure. What I'm doing, I'm get employee annual salary. Inside this procedure, I'm calling this calculate annual salary function. This is a function, and I'm passing monthly salary. What it will do, it will return the annual salary based on the monthly salary. Okay, so this will do like that. So what I'm doing, I'm giving uh, 1 lakh as a salary here. So it has to calculate the monthly salary for this. It has to calculate annual salary for this monthly salary of 1 lakh. So I'm running this PLSQL code. Okay, we got some error here. Let's see what is happening. uh, we are creating a procedure. Okay, wait a moment. So we have to um, use this block as well, because I want to get a data. I want to execute that. So for executing, I'm using anonymous block. Okay, there is a double semicolon. I'm removing it. Okay. You see, annual salary is the 12 lakhs. For my monthly salary, I am passing this monthly salary into the function, which I am reusing it inside another procedure. There is a procedure get employee annual salary procedure. Inside this procedure, I am calling calculate annual salary function. So that's how we will use the function inside another procedure, because function will return a value, right? I'm assigning that result to p underscore annual underscore salary variable, right? This variable, okay, this variable is the out parameter to my processor, right? I'm calling my processor again. I'm printing this out variable here as the annual salary. So that's how you will specify, you will use the function, you will use the function inside another function. But some people, they say we can also use a procedure inside another procedure. Sometimes some people say the procedure also will return output parameter, function also returning the some value as a result. But what is the main difference? So people used to ask that question. See, function is here, it is returning a value, but people say we can also design a procedure in such a way that it is returning the output data using out parameter or reference cursor, right? So if both options are serving same purpose, what is the main difference of function? Some people will ask that query. Okay, because see, call the I can also call this procedure. I can also call this uh, procedure inside another procedure. That is also possible, right? So what is the main difference here? So I will explain that. So calling a procedure inside another procedure, that is also possible, right? I'm taking that example. So here you can see we have created a get employee salary function procedure, right? And what we are doing here, we are calculating the salary using a 12 monthly. We are calculating a annual salary, right? Which is why we are multiplying the salary using a this one monthly salary, right? There is another procedure get employee details with salary, and I am calling the first procedure get employee salary, this procedure inside a second procedure. So I did the same thing in previous example, right? But what is the difference? We are also calling the function inside a procedure, we are also calling procedure inside a procedure, right? This procedure will return me the salary, this v underscore salary, right? This salary, and I'm so after that what I'm doing, I'm assigning this output salary to a cursor, right? So in this scenario also I'm achieving the same purpose. See, calculated annual salary is 12 lakhs, salary is 1 lakh. But what is the main difference between the procedure and function? In earlier example, we created a function and then we call that function inside a procedure. In this example, we created a procedure and we call that procedure inside another procedure. This is also possible. In real time, we we will use like this also. So most of the time we call a procedure inside a procedure, or we call a function inside a procedure. That is also possible, right? The main purpose of the function is a different from the procedure. Calling a procedure inside another procedure, it is a different concept, where calling a function from a procedure is a different scenario. But when we use the function, when we use the procedure, I'll explain you that. So here I created a function. My purpose is, whenever I pass a string to this function, it has to it has to print that particular string. Uh, the first character is, I will I'll explain you. So I will pass a string. Let's say I'm passing a string Srinivasa Rao, and that function should give output as a first letter as capital, second letter is a small, and again third letter is capital, fourth letter is small, again sixth letter is um, capital, seventh letter is small. That way, that this function should return a value. Why we create a functions? We create the function to achieve specific purpose, right? I'm going to pass some input value, and you do some logic and some magic inside it, and return some value and return the expected output, so that I can use that function inside my procedure. And we all know there are many functions, like you take SQL functions. You can refer SQL functions in Oracle. Okay, there are many functions are there. So you see, average is a one function, count is a one function, first is a max, sum. These are all SQL functions, right? So you can use this function. In the same way, we have created a another custom defined function. So this is a custom defined function where format alternating case. There is a SQL function uppercase as well. Let's search with uppercase. See, U case. What they are doing, they are using that function inside SQL query. Okay, so whenever they use this select UCase column name from the table, the returned result of that particular column will be converted into uppercase and lowercase. But now we are writing our own predefined function. What it will do, it will it will return the first letter as uppercase, second letter is lowercase. So which is why we named it as a alternating format case change. Okay, alternating case. So this function was not there in SQL function, but we are creating this function. So after creating this function, I am going to use this function inside my SQL query. You see, select and then format alternating case and passing the string value, and then assigning the data into output parameter variable in this procedure. So I have created a function, and I am calling that function inside the procedure, but I'm calling it inside a query language, SQL statement. So in earlier examples, we call this function outside of the SQL statement, but here we are calling that function inside SQL statements. So that is the main difference here. So whenever somebody asks what is the difference between function and procedure, functions we can create and we can use them inside query language, inside SQL statement along with the SQL statements. Whereas procedures you cannot use along with the SQL statements. Inside SQL statements, you cannot use a procedure, but you can call that procedure inside another procedure. Okay, you can call that procedure inside another procedure. But functions serves two purpose. One thing is, you can create a function, you can call that function inside another procedure, or you can also call in along with the SQL statement. So that's how the SQL functions will be used, right? So we already have multiple many predefined functions. In the same way, we have created a some custom defined function here, right? We have defined custom defined functions. So now I'm going to call that function inside my processor. It return a result. My string is an alternative case difference, right? You can see this. So that is the main difference between the function and the procedure. A function can be used inside a procedure or along with the SQL statement. So in real time scenario, in real time application development, we will create multiple custom defined functions like this for our various purposes. So in business, there is a business scenario. In that business scenario, I want to do some logic, and that function will return some result as a output. So for that purpose, we will write a separate custom defined function, and then we will call that function inside our SQL statements, or we can also use them inside our stored procedures that will return the value, and we can see it is returning. It is returning the varchar value, right? So you can utilize inside a SQL, or you can assign that to some. You can also call like this. So both the things will work. You can use either of the scenario here. You can call a function like this, or you can also call the function here. But procedure you cannot use inside SQL statement. Only function only you can use inside the SQL statement. So that is the main difference of the function and procedure. Right. Then now, um, I will tell you now. So far you have seen what is the function and the procedure. Now I explain other concept, XQuery. And XQuery means, so far we have seen the tables will store the data in the rows and columns format, right? It will store the data like this. So if table will have columns as attributes, and the data will be stored in the rows like this, right? So if I want to get a data, I will fetch the data using a column name. But the thing is, there is a scenario. What if I have 100 columns in a table? Okay, I have to create a table using 100 columns like this. Okay, that is okay. So let's say if I want to have 1,000 columns in a table, what happens? If I want to create thousand thousand columns, then what happens? I have to create a table using multiple columns. It will increase the table size, right? It will increase the table. So I have to create these many number of columns. So it will increase it. If I am having a 1 lakh columns, what should I do? I have to create a table with the 1 lakh columns. Again, it will increase so many. I have to create a table. I have to create a table with the 1 lakh columns. Is it a good approach in real time? Is it a good approach for that kind of requirement? No, it's not a good approach, because I have to create a columns like this. Multiple columns I have to create for a table, right? You can see, if the requirement is very simple and the table is having less number of columns, we can directly go with this storing the data in column oriented approach. But if the data is very huge, if the number of columns to be created are very huge, then this is not the right way. So in that In those cases, we will store the data in the form of XML document. Okay, in the form of XML document. So I'll show you the example. Now you see here, there is a customer. There is a customer's document. Okay, and each customer is having a name and address. So you can also have a phone numbers also. You can also have a demographic information, other information. So if I want to do that for every customer, I have to create a name column and address column. Again, address column will have different attributes, and again address. Take this, or else I'll take this employee document. So I can have employee. There are multiple employees. So inside an employee, I have three employees: employee 1, employee 2, employee 3. Okay, I can have multiple employees as well. Again, the for each employee, I can have address tag, and again this address will have uh, address details, and I can have phone number. I can have demographic information. So you can increase many number of columns inside XML document. If you do that, it is all a single document, right? As I told you, you want to add 1,000 column attributes or 10,000, 1 lakh column attributes. You can create a separate tag inside a single XML document, and you will store this XML document as a data in the table form. Okay, there is a XML table data type in Oracle, DB2 or MySQL. You take any other database, so they will have a XML table data type. Generally, we will have integer data type for storing integer value, varchar data types for storing varchar, character data type for characters, and boolean for boolean values. In the same way, for storing XML document, we'll have XML table data type. We can store XML document kind of data in a single, uh, sorry, it is XML type. XML type is a column name. So we can store XML document like that. So as I told you, whenever we want to create a table with multiple columns, 1 lakh columns or 1,000, 10,000 columns, or multiple column names, it is not a standard way to create a table in a standard format using rows and columns format. Rather, you can store your data in the form of XML. So that way it will save you the storage, it will save you the memory. Okay, it will reduce the complexity of handling the data storage and management. So that's why they provided a XML type as a another schema column type for storing this XML kind of data. So that's why we have I want to explain you the store procedure, processing of XML document, how we process the XML kind of document. So here you can see there is a table, employee XML data table. Here we are trying to store employee ID and XML document as XML column, and this document can have any any length of XML document. Can be the XML document of just 3 attributes, but you can create XML document of 1 lakh attributes also, right? You can store that entire XML into a single XML column. You are not creating multiple columns here, rather you have created only one XML column, and you are storing all the attributes, that 1 lakh attributes in a single XML document in a single XML column. So how you can retrieve the XML document as XML document as a columns? I will explain you that. So now we have created this stored procedure, and this stored procedure, what it will do, it will retrieve this XML document, and it is, while retrieving it, it is retrieving the each attribute as a separate column. You see, it is returning. We have opened a cursor, and for that cursor we are retrieving first name, last name, salary as a separate columns. Even if the data is stored in XML column, but while retrieving the data, we are retrieving as a separate column. So this is the main purpose of stored procedure, right? You take any other stored procedure, what we will do, we have to retrieve the data. Okay, we have to retrieve we have data as a separate column. We have seen it in the reference cursor example. We have seen it in a reference cursor example. In reference cursor example, we are returning 2 columns and assigning those 2 columns to reference cursor. Or you take first example, we have 2 columns, first parameter and second parameter, right? And we are returning 2 separate columns. Okay, we are returning them as a separate columns. So in the same way, even if you are storing this XML document in a single column, but while retrieving it, we can retrieve them as a separate relational columns. We are converting the XML document into relational columns. So this is where we use this. We use the XQuery concept. We use XQuery. So you all know SQL query language. In the same way, XQuery is the query language that is used to process and fetch the XML document related data from the database. Okay, that's where we use the XML data. So always remember uh, XML document and processing of XML XQuery. See, you see XQuery tutorial. So XQuery is also one of the XQuery XPath concepts at database side. So XQuery concept is the concept where it is used to process the XML document. It is not specific to database. XQuery concept is generally can be applied at application side also. We are, if you want to process the XML document. The same way, the database side, the PLSQL programming is also an option to manipulate XML document using XQuery XPath options. So that's why here we can you can use this XML table, XML type. Okay, XML type, the table type of the column XML type, XML table. In inside XML table, we are what we are doing, we are passing this XML column. Okay, we are passing this XML column, and then after that we are converting each attribute as a column, relational column. So this is the logic that we are doing. So inside XML, we are passing XML column as a parameter, and using this, uh, what is the main attribute here? Main attribute is the employee inside XML document. employee is the main attribute tag. So which is why we specified the main attribute slash employee. And what are the columns present under this main employee tag? First name, last name, salary. So which is why we specified columns are employee, and we are returning that as a string, because generally the name will be the string, right? And wherever you see the numeric values, we can return them as a number. That is why salary we are returning as a number data type. So this is how we can store the large volumes of XML data. So whenever there is a project requirement and project scenario, you want to create a table with multiple column numbers, then you should not generally go with that approach. Okay, you should not generally go with that approach, and you should go with the XML approach. Okay, there are 1 lakh attributes for XML for particular information, and you cannot normalize that. You cannot um, create multiple store tables and store them into multiple tables. Rather, you can simply create a one document, because you don't need. There are no relationships. There are no um, foreign key relationships or primary key relationships. You just want to store that data as a complete document. You want to get that data. If that is your requirement, then you don't need to create a multiple tables, right? Or if you want to create a single table, it will create a problem with the 1 lakh column attributes. So in such scenario, you can store the document. You can store the document with a single XML document, and then you can process that document as a relational columns while retrieving the data. So that's where we use this XQuery concept. XQuery concept is the one of the query language that is generally used to fetch the data from XML document. Right? This XQuery concept, XPath XQuery concept was there in Oracle database and DB2 database. So different vendors will provide this option as well. So different projects will have to handle the data processing like this. Instead of storing the data in columns as a columns, you need to store the data in the form of XML. So in those cases, you have to write the SQL queries and XQuery. You have to combine the SQL and XQuery to process the data, to fetch the data. XQuery is used to uh, process the XML document into relational columns. SQL query language is used to fetch the data, right? You know about the SQL. So I'm going to create this store procedure for demonstrating the example. So now this is my XML. I want to retrieve this my XML columns as a relational tables. Right? I'm running this. Now you see first name I have retrieved John, last name is Doe, salary is 70,000. So I was able to retrieve the data as a separate columns. Earlier we have seen it, when we store the data in three columns, we are able to retrieve the data for three columns. But here we have stored the document in single XML document. Here I just hard coded it for our demonstration example purpose. Generally we store this XML document inside a table, right? But here for showing in a demonstration, I just hard coded the XML document. But while retrieving it, you can see here, this is how we will retrieve the XML attributes as a separate relational columns. I'm converting this XML document columns as a separate relational columns using XQuery concept. Okay, XQuery is the uh, one of the concept that is provided at database side, database vendors, to process and manipulate the XML document kind of data in a database. Okay, now Let's say my XML is having three employee records, right? And I can actually retrieve the three employees also, three employees data also, multiple. So if I am going to increase the number of attributes, number of columns, okay, that time also I can use the XQuery to fetch the data. See, now I have three documents. I have retrieved three documents as a relational column set. So this is the power of the XQuery concept, where if there is a scenario you want to store multiple number of columns of data, so in that time you can simply store the data in the form of XML instead of relational columns. If you create a relational columns, you may need to normalize the tables. You cannot create a single table with 1 lakh 1 lakh number of columns. So if those scenarios are not working for your project requirement, you can handle the uh, you can provide the solution in this way. So this is a good approach when you are going to handle this kind of uh, as scenario. Okay. And another the beauty of this XQuery is you can also do some you can also uh, have some condition checking. You can also have some loops. You can also assign assign a variable to uh, particular. You can also assign particular attribute to a variable. Basically, you can retrieve the data based on different conditions. So you can have if else condition. Let's say if your XML document you want to retrieve where last name matches doe, how can you do that, right? I just want to retrieve only this particular XML tag. I don't want to retrieve these two. We can also do that. So for handling that kind of scenarios, XQuery will provide XQuery programming approach. You can see that example here. So my employee tags are having status attribute. Wherever you see the status is open, that employee is active. Wherever the status is closed, that employee is not active. So my requirement is here. Whenever, okay, the employee status is closed, I want to return its salary as zero, because for inactive employees I don't want to have a salary, right? So that is my requirement here. So I want to store this XML employee data in the form of XML, and while retrieving the data I want to retrieve the first name, last name, and the corresponding salaries. But the condition is, for inactive employees I don't want to retrieve their salaries. Instead I want to retrieve the salary as zero. I don't want to pay the salary to the inactive employees, right? So that is my requirement, project requirement. So how can I handle that kind of requirement? So I'll explain you the example here. So I'm going to take this example here. I'm going to paste it here. You see what I'm doing. Again, I have used XQuery concept here. I'm converting these XML documents. But one thing is, here I have a case when statement, right? First I have retrieved the data, the status column, right? I'm getting the status column, okay? And then after getting this status column, I am having a condition where if the status is equal to closed, then return the salary as zero, or else return the actual salary. So that way I can also see it returned the zero for the employee Alice, because Alice status is closed. Only uh, John and Bob both are active employees, whereas Alice is inactive employee, which is why we are returning a zero. Actually, his salary is initially it was 60,000, but now this employee was inactive. I don't want to retrieve the salary, actual salary. Rather, I want to retrieve it as a zero. So this is how we can handle the business logic inside the stored procedures using XQuery concept in case if we store the data in the form of XML document. So this is one of the concepts in PLSQL programming blocks. So far you have seen how this you can you have seen how you can process the XML document and XML data as well. So if we want to go little bit deeper into this XQuery programming, there is a concept let expressions. So where you can see you can actually iterate that employee document. So, and then you can actually assign particular attribute into a variable, and you can have a condition check on that particular variable, and then you can return final result. So you can do all this logic using a flower expression. flower expression Flower expression in XQuery. So this is one of the concept in flower expressions where you can loop the number of XML documents, assign the value, and you can also have a where condition, order by, and return. You can do all these checks using a XQuery concept. So my XML document, if you see here, is having a three XML documents, and each one is associated with the attribute called status. Can be open or it can be closed. So what I am doing first, I am fetching each employee record using a for loop, right? This is how the flower expression works. So I'm fetching each employee record into employee variable, okay, and uh, I'm taking another variable, status variable. I'm providing p underscore status, means this is my input variable. Let's say I want to verify the closed status related documents only, right? So that way I'm going to give a closed status value. I'm assigning that value to the status variable. So what I'm doing here, I am checking my closed status variable with the status attribute of each employee, right? Whenever it matches, because I'm using if condition here, you can check whenever it matches closed status, then I'm going to do my specific business logic. I'm going to return like my specific business logic. I can make the salary here as a zero, or I can make it hard code as a zero, because I want to uh, return the salary of inactive employees as a zero, right? So this is how I can use the flower expression. So I can handle some logic. I can iterate the XML documents. Let's say if my XML documents is having 1 lakh records, right? And different attributes are there, and I want to implement some logic. So then I can achieve it using this flower expression in XQuery concept. So most of the people are not aware of this XQuery concept. Most of the developers also not aware of it. Since I worked on it, I'm able to explain you this concept. So it would be better if you have an idea on this concept. Basically, we are doing all this business logic implementation at a database side, not at application side. We all know generally people use this XQuery manipulation at application side, but at database side also we can handle this logic at database side also, and we can retrieve the XML data as a separate relational columns. So it is one of the important concepts at database side. XQuery language XQuery language for getting the data, XML data in the form of relational columns. Whenever there is a requirement to store a huge number of attributes as a columns, we can go ahead with this XML document storage approach, and we can utilize this XQuery concept to retrieve the data as a relational normal SQL columns. I hope this video would be useful for all of you. Thanks for watching. And the next video, we will see how to uh, use the NoSQL databases in the real time in IT industry for the development purpose. Thank you all. Thanks for watching.